The Edmonton Oilers' big guns have yet to really get going through 4 games. What's up with that?
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. I am your host, Nick Zararis. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Oilers their first listen of the day. Locked On Oilers, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So, on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, ahead of their showdown with the Nashville Predators tonight, got an 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time puck drop. We are going to be talking about how the Oilers' big guns, McDavid, Bouchard, Hyman, have yet to really get going, have yet to really find their games. And we could throw Draisaitl in this bucket as well, but being that he scored the overtime winner against the Flyers the other night, we'll give him a little bit of breathing room. So our first segment here, we're going to talk about whether or not Ekholm and Bouchard are shooting the puck a little bit too much. In our second segment, we are going to analyze Zach Hyman shooting, where he's shooting from, the types of chances he's creating. And then we're going to talk a little briefly about Connor McDavid in that second segment as well. And then in the third segment, we're going to tie a bow on it, bring it all together as to why it probably is just early season figuring it out. So when we are early in the season, it is important to use context. And frankly, whenever we're having these types of discussions and we're doing player evaluations, we should always be using context. And there are degrees of context. We can talk about game situation, whether or not the Oilers are playing with or without a lead. We can talk about line mates, who they are and aren't playing with. We can talk about opposition, quality of opposition, and we can talk, of course, about the feeling out process. We all understand that hockey has changed fundamentally over the last 5 to 10 years, maybe even broader, maybe even the last 20 years, where preseason used to be about just getting guys in shape. It used to be just for the lack of a better term, an exercise camp to get guys who either worked other jobs, as if we go further back, if we go to the original 6 era through the 70s, a lot of players had to work normal jobs on the side when the hockey season was over. And then as we've gotten closer to a true peak as far as professionalism in athletics, now these guys are in world-class shape year-round. Even during the summer, even when they are away from their team, they are working out with a personal trainer almost every day. They are skating on their own pretty frequently. They have access to nutrition, world-class nutritional information and nutrition stuff. Teams often make those people available to the players in the offseason so that they can do strategic stuff as far as body composition and conditioning and all the components that go into putting a professional athlete together in 2024. There's a lot of variables. There's a lot of pieces. And the Oilers are very much still in that feeling out process. They are trying to get an understanding of what is and isn't working. And when you're in this early stage, and we can be frank, the Oilers offense has struggled through 4 games. I know ultimately they did come on and win that game against the Flyers on Tuesday, but you gotta get that part of your team going. You heard me say before, the Oilers playing with a lead is really essential to their formula because that's when they can start to snowball on you, go downhill, take advantage of you. And the Oilers, because they have been behind in most of the games they've played so far, they have yet to really get their offense going. And that starts, and one of the really telltale ways I know the Oilers offense is struggling is the fact that Evan Bouchard has generated the most individual scoring chances of anyone on the Oilers. And look, Evan Bouchard is one of the best shooting defensemen in the entire NHL. There is no hesitation in my mind about that. Somebody who very well could score 20 goals as a defenseman, which is a very infrequent occurrence because it is difficult to score goals as a defenseman. Just even if you are a gifted shooter, it is difficult to score a ton of goals as a defenseman because of your positional responsibilities. Where you are on the ice does not lend itself to a lot of goal scoring. When you are 30, 40, 50 feet away from the net, it is a lot more challenging to score goals. And I'm going to share a shooting map here if it will cooperate. We want to share screen. We want to share this one. This is Evan Bouchard's shot map through the first 4 games of the NHL season. What you'll notice here is that Evan Bouchard is credited with 8 Fenwick shots. That means shots that aren't blocked. That means shots that aren't impeded or miss the net entirely. These are the shots that end up on goal, Fenwick shots. He has scored 1 goal so far this season. You see on the screen here, the little yellow box. That is the goal from the 3rd period of the game against the Flyers. You see, that is the highest quality scoring chance Evan Bouchard has had all season. You look at where these other shots are coming from, the high point, the far point, and these are all 5-on-5, so his power play stuff isn't going to be on here. But the numbers bear this out. When we go back up and go over to my notes here, Evan Bouchard has taken 30 scoring chances. 8 of them have ended up on goal. You saw the 8 Fenwick shots on goal. 8 on goal. That means only 1 in 5 of the scoring chances he is individually taking. So he himself, only 1 in 5 is ending up on the net. That is far too low, and it tells me 2 things. Number one, what we talked about on yesterday's show, the idea that because the Oilers are playing from behind so much, their opponents are taking a more defensive posture, and they want Evan Bouchard to take that shot from pretty far away. They want him to settle for that 30, 40-foot shot, because that is a shot that A, a player can get in front of and block, B, their goalie will have time to read, get in position, and make the save, or C, a shot that is going to be under duress, meaning that Bouchard is going to have to take a shot faster than he wants to because I shouldn't say a forechecker, because a defending player is pressuring him. That's why, as I said in the recap episode after the game against the Flyers, he had 4 or 5 shots blocked at the point where a player was bearing down on him and he had to make a decision faster than he wanted to, and he fired the puck right into the opposing player's shin pads. And because of that, the other team was able to get transition play, go the other way, and even if they weren't able to score, they were able to put pressure on the Oilers defense, which is the sensitive spot on their team. So I think that is something that will get rectified over time. Last year, Evan Bouchard had 329 scoring chances. 153 of them ultimately ended up being registered as shots on goal. So 47% of his scoring chances ended up being shots on goal. Right now, he's at half of that. He's at 20% of his scoring chances registering as shot on goal. So I think with time, with McDavid and Hyman, who we're going to talk about a little bit more in the upcoming segments, getting more shots on goal, I think that will in turn unlock more. And then real quick, the other telltale sign the Oilers offense is still in this feeling out process and ironing itself out process. Mattias Ekholm is up there for scoring chances created as an individual, and he is not a shooter. And I understand Ekholm was, I want to say, 5th or 6th in scoring chances last season on the team. But if Ekholm and Bouchard are shooting the puck this much, that means McDavid isn't, that means Hyman isn't, that means, at least as far as the game against the Flyers, Draisaitl isn't. When you have your best guys out there, when you have your big guns, there are degrees. You think about this in terms of shot selection in, say, basketball or target share in football, where you have, if we're talking about football, you got 3 receivers, a tight end, and a running back. In basketball, you got 5 players, you got 2 forwards, 2 guards, and a center. Different players bring different skill sets to the table. You want them doing different things. You don't want Ekholm and Bouchard shooting this much when they are on the ice at the same time as McDavid, Hyman, and Draisaitl. It's not as efficient. And we are going to take our first break of today's episode. When we come back, we are going to tackle this from the Hyman McDavid perspective, tie a nice little bow on this conversation before moving along as to why this will all probably be just fine. So be sure to stick around. Coming back after this break. Hey, NFL fans, you can enjoy the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. This week in the NFL, tonight on Thursday Night Football, we got the Sean Payton Bowl. The Denver Broncos going to New Orleans to take on the Saints. The Saints 2.5-point home underdogs. Over in England for the early risers, Sunday morning, the New England Patriots and Drake May coming off of his NFL debut to take on Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars 5.5-point favorites on a neutral site. My favorite game of the weekend, though, CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans going up to Green Bay to take on Jordan Love and the Packers. Packers 2.5-point home favorites. And of course, the Saquon Barkley Bowl, the Philadelphia Eagles and Barkley coming up to MetLife Stadium to take on the New York Football Giants, where the Giants and Daniel Jones are 3-point home underdogs. So head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers. My plan is to record an episode right after the game against the Predators for Friday, so that way people who weren't able to watch the game or were half watching baseball were able to get a little bit more. That's always the goal here, is added value on Locked On Oilers. I understand that if you are watching the Oilers and then going out to seek content about your team, whether it's written, whether it's podcasts, whether it's social content, you want more information on top of what you already have. I know you watch the game. My goal here is to help you understand the game and give you a deeper grasp as to why things are happening, because that's ultimately the goal here. I want to understand hockey as much as I can, and I understand, like any true academic, you are always trying to get more knowledge. You will never attain all knowledge. Anybody who tells you they know everything is lying to you. They are too conceited. They are too confident. There is an importance in knowledge to maintain a humbleness. That knowledge is something that is acquired and needs to be maintained. It needs to be fostered. It needs to be worked on. And anybody who feels like they have all of the answers is somebody you should be weary of. But in analyzing the Oilers' first few games, it's not a secret. They are having a hard time scoring. And I think a lot of that is derived from the fact they've been trailing in a lot of these games. And it is harder to score when the other team takes a more defensive posture. You hear me keep alluding to that, but when guys drop deeper, they get in shooting lanes to block shots. They force you to settle for chances from far away. It makes things more difficult. Now, as for Zach Hyman, who led the team in individual scoring chances, shots on goal, and individual expected goals last season, and by a pretty considerable mark, he has 17 scoring chances. He has 4 shots on goal. So I'm going to pull up Zach Hyman's shot map here so you can understand what I am alluding to. So if you're watching over on YouTube, which you should be because we have added value components like shot maps, you see where Zach Hyman does his hard work. You see him credited with 10 Fenwick shots. You see him credited with 1 total expected goal. So real quick, expected goals is a measure of how likely scoring chances are to result in a goal. The more dangerous a scoring chance, the more high value, the higher the expected goals. So you see, for example, this scoring chance here against the Flyers, this wrist shot from 10 feet away has an expected goals value of 34.8. 34.8 is a very dangerous scoring chance. 34.8 means that historically, 34.8 of the scoring chances, percent of the scoring chances from this spot on the ice have resulted in a goal. That's how that value is calculated. The expected goals is based on historic data as to where a shot comes from. You see, Zach Hyman's office is right here in and around the net front. When he is in his office, it opens up so much more because when Zach Hyman is down low, he's here around the crease, around the net mouth. That's going to bring defenders towards him. That's supposed to open up shooting lanes from the point. You know, we looked at the Bouchard shooting map before where his shots were very concentrated from the right point where you would expect the right-handed defenseman to get a lot of his shots from. For Hyman, you need him down and around this net front area because A, he's really good at the tap-in, he's really good at deflections, and B, he's the forechecker on that line, meaning that when he is on the ice, his job is to pressure the other team's defense, both as a forechecker. When they are trying to win loose pucks behind the boards, it is Hyman's job to win those loose pucks so he can get it to McDavid or Draisaitl or Nugent-Hopkins or Jeff Skinner, whoever they happen to be playing with. I know I saw Bob Stauffer tweet the lines today and that the Oilers were going to roll with the same lines and defensive pairs as they had in the win over the Flyers. And we know historically that's what hockey coaches like to do. They don't like to change the lineup after wins. They only like to change it after losses because they don't want to have a negative feedback cycle, for the lack of a better term. And that means the Oilers are probably going to have more things to figure out. And look, I understand after 4 games, it is way too early to be drawing definitive conclusions about anything. Like I had said in that first segment when we were talking about Bouchard, he ended up with almost half of his scoring chances ended up becoming shots on goal. I think we over the course of a season, as the Oilers get that first line going, whatever permutation it takes, if it's McDavid, Hyman, and Nugent-Hopkins, if it's McDavid, Hyman, and Skinner, if it's McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, whatever, even if it's McDavid, Hyman, Henrique, whatever permutation of that first line is, as McDavid gets going, that's going to open up more space. That is going to enable Evan Bouchard to get closer to the net, to take more dangerous shots, to use that shot. You know, I was watching the game on TNT the other night. They kept flashing the graphic, more 90-mile-an-hour shots than any other player in the league. Evan Bouchard is a very high-volume shooter for a defenseman, which can be a double-edged sword. The impact of defensemen shooting on possession, we have a very strong correlation between quality of chance, who's taking the shot, and possession. If defensemen are consistently shooting more than their forwards, we have typically and historically seen that those teams have the puck less. Because think about it in your head. If a defenseman is taking a shot from the point, there are a lot of things, a lot of variables that can happen in the puck's journey from the shot to the net. Even if it gets on goal, there is no guarantee the goalie is going to be screened, that it's going to get hit on the way in. And that 40-foot shot to a goalie who's got a clear line of sight on it, that's not really doing a lot as far as pressure and offense. And then, because it's a low danger chance, because it is from far away, that means that it's easier to block. It's easier for it to miss the net entirely. If it misses the net entirely, it is easier for the defending team to recover the puck, break out the other way, and go the other way. And then real quick, we'll do McDavid now in this segment so we can tie a bow on the shot maps. But looking at the shot maps through 3 games, you get an understanding of why the Oilers are struggling a bit right now. And look, McDavid's got good chances here. This chance against Calgary, that's a type of goal you need to go in. These high danger chances from the slot, this is McDavid's bread and butter. When he is able to attack the net front with speed, get the goalie moving laterally, force the defenseman to make a play, that's where he's at his best. And so far, he has yet to score a goal at 5-on-5. And look, we know he got off to a slow start last year as well. He said himself he worked too hard in the offseason. He was a little bit fatigued coming in, got hurt early on, took a few games to get right, and then he had a 100-assist season. I am not worried about McDavid, Hyman, Draisaitl, Bouchard, Ekholm yet. The Oilers do have things to be worried about. They do need to figure out which permutation of their defense they are going to feel the most confident in until they get to the trade deadline and can add more talent. We're going to take one more break on today's edition of Locked On Oilers, and we are going to tie in all together and to say why the Oilers are probably going to be just fine. Stick around to this edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. If you know me, you know I love getting out there and going to events. Last night, I was at Mets-Dodgers. I unfortunately sat through the Dodgers beating the Mets 8-0, paying a lot of money to sit in the cold, but at least I saw my friends. At least I got to see an NLCS game at Citi Field this year. Sunday, I will be at the Saquon Barkley Bowl. I will be at Giants-Eagles, and then Sunday night, I will be at Maggie Rogers at Madison Square Garden. And the only place I buy tickets to go to games or go to concerts is through our friends over at Gametime, with some of the best features in the ticket buying experience. My personal favorite, the seat view. You get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Going to a playoff baseball game, I want to know how good the strike zone is. I want to be able to heckle the umpire. I can see my view before buying tickets. The lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference, and Gametime ticket coverage, where your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game time. Today's show is also brought to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. With PrizePicks, you can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. This week, Saquon Barkley revenge game. I will be hammering the over in his receiving yards, his touchdowns, his rushing yards, because that is revenge. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. Go check out PrizePicks today. Get that $50. Don't even need to win. Thank you to everyone who is hanging out on this Thursday edition of Locked On Oilers as I get you ready for Oilers Predators. And I'll do this now. I said it before the Flyer game on Tuesday night, recording the episode, that the Flyers play a style that will give the Oilers a hard time because they forecheck so aggressively, because they cycle. Nashville is a bit of a mess right now, kind of in the same vein as Edmonton, because they are trying to put a lot of new players in a lineup at the same time. They have a ton of talent. You've got Yossi, you've got Forsberg, you got Saros, you got Brady Shea, you got Stamkos, you got Marcia. So keep an eye on guys down the lineup like Tommy Evangelista and Tommy Novak, that Philip Tomasino. They have really talented players and they have a deep lineup, but they have yet to really put it all together. And that's to be expected. When you are putting that many new players in your lineup and that many talented players in your lineup, everybody's kind of got to feel each other out. There is a learning curve to getting familiar with your partners or your line mates if you're a forward. And part of that is understanding how those guys read the game. You heard me talking in that first segment about Ekholm and Bouchard taking the majority of the shots when they're on the ice with McDavid and Hyman. And they both were very high volume shooters last year. And last year, it will be very curious to see over the course of this entire season how much of what worked for them last year was kind of flash in the pan / career year / outlier statistically, because I have said from the outset, I expect Hyman to be closer to 30 goals than 50 goals. I expect McDavid to score some more goals. I expect Nuge to score more goals and have more assists. And I expected Skinner Arvidsson to be able to pick up a lot of the slack from the guys who were no longer in the lineup, or in the case of Evander Kane injured. Evander Kane took a lot of shots for the Oilers last year. I know Evander Kane wasn't very well-rounded and kind of can be frustrating as a player because he likes to take things upon himself and occasionally takes bad penalties. But that said, the Oilers need to replace that volume. They need to shoot the puck more. And if they can get out to leads, that will help them a lot more, because other teams will stop playing them so conservatively defensively. They will stop playing no doubles defense and need to be aggressive. You know, it's hard to get volume of offense when the other team is giving you outside space, because you got two choices to move the puck. You can skate it where you want it to go, or you can pass it where you want to go. And if there's open space and the other team is able to funnel you where they want you, they can start to get the game to go the way they want it to. And I know Ekholm and Bouchard shot the puck a lot last year. That's fine. That's a good thing. Those are good hockey players. But Hyman being as low as he is right now tells me they are not either A, the Oilers as a team are not doing as good of a job as they need to get him involved, or B, defenses are adjusting. Defenses have I won't say figured out or solved, but they've accounted for what Hyman did last year in their preparation, and they're able to play him a bit better defensively. They are able to put more pressure on him and not give him as much space in and around that net front. And that said, I think McDavid's going to get going. I think that will in turn open up space for everyone else because, as I said on that episode where we did the power play, it's the same general principle at 5-on-5. When McDavid is bobbing and weaving, if he's on the half walls, if he's behind the net, he brings the defense to him. And if all of the defense is shaded towards one player, that gives so much more space for the other four guys. And that space for those other four guys is where the Oilers get going. That's where it feels like they are inevitable offensively. And you saw a glimmer of that in the third period of the game against the Flyers. The Oilers chasing the lead, able to get the Flyers moving left to right, attacking them with width, forcing them to compromise. And then on the goal, on the Bouchard goal, we showed you on the shot map, you watched the game. Everybody on the Flyers is looking one way, and Bouchard's unmarked in the slot between the circles because everybody is cheating towards the McDavid side of the ice, and that puts Bouchard in a position to hammer home a crucial tying goal to force overtime where McDavid can do his magic and get the Oilers the win by setting up a Draisaitl, but albeit by a rebound and Draisaitl cashing in the rebound. But you get what I'm saying here. The Oilers offense is still getting going. I am not worried. You should not be worried. But that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. So if you could be so kind, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please leave the show a 5-star review. If you're watching over on YouTube, which I highly recommend because then you can see things like the shot maps and other visualizations to enhance your viewing experience, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the alarm bell to get a notification whenever new content goes live. Leave me a comment. How worried are you about the Oilers offense down below? I will talk to you guys after the Predators game. See you guys then. Until then, let's go Oilers.